In this video, we are going to create a temporary version of the object pooling so we can implement shooting mechanism and later implement the correct pooling system. So let's create a new folder and we can rename this to pooling system. And inside this folder, let's create a new C# script and we can call it pooling manager. And let's open the script. First, let's delete the default start and update method. And then let's declare a public static variable to create a static reference for easier access. And set the type to pooling manager. And let's just call this instance. This static reference will be available on all of the scripts in this project. And it can be accessed easily without using getComponent or findObjectOfType. Static field can only be occupied by one instance. So any reference to it will always refer to the same object. In this case would be the pooling manager. Next, let's create awake method. And when creating static reference, we want to initialize it on awake. So the static ref will be available on other classes inside the start method if needed. To initialize the variable, we can just type instance and then pass this keyword. This will set the static variable value to this class. We need to make sure there are only one object that use this script in the scene. And next, let's create a public method called useObject. And this will be used for getting the object from the pool. And for the parameter, we need to set the first one to GameObject called obj. The second one would be a vector tree called pos. And the last one would be a quaternion called rotation. For now, we are going just to instantiate an object inside this method. But later, we are going to replace the code with the pooling system. So let's pass the obj, pos, and the rotation into the instantiate arguments. But we need to change the return type to object, so we can return the instantiated game objects. Let's add a return keyword before the instantiate code. This way, we will pass the instantiated object in this method. Let's save the script, and for the next method, we want to create a public void method called returnObject, and this is going to be used for removing the object from the scene and putting it back to the pool. But for now, we are going to destroy the game object, and later we will replace the code once we implement the pooling system correctly. Save the script and let's go back to Unity. Now let's create a new empty game object and rename it to pooling manager. And let's add the pooling manager script into this newly created game object. And this concludes this video.